So my name is Max Niggle. I'm 69 and I was diagnosed in November 1987.
You sort of mentioned this before, so just briefly.
Well, it was pretty much disbelief. How could this happen to me? I had a seroconversion illness, which we now know what that was, 4 years before that, and it made me extremely unwell, but I came through it and all the blood tests showed nothing. So to be diagnosed, it just created a sense of angst and worry, and it consumed me about, will I live or will I die? Because we all knew back then it was a death sentence, and now we know, of course, everyone lives really well with HIV. So complete contrasts in that period. So living and having HIV for, let's say, nearly 40 years is quite the remarkable thing. But it was very difficult trying to manage full-time work and also managing doctor's appointments, getting across to Fairfield, going over there wondering what your blood test results are going to be. Will you survive another month before you've got to go into hospital or whatever? But part of it was having to disclose to my parents and to a few family members and a few friends. Will I be rejected? Will I be accepted? Will I still be loved? But the reality was they were incredibly supportive and loving. And even my dad called me and said, you know, if I could take this virus away and let you live a normal life, I would. Now that just made a huge difference to me, because he was the one I was most scared of, about his reaction. So they were stalwarts in supporting me through that and those early years. The doctors and the nurses in particular really made a huge difference in supporting everybody that was going through the same journey at the time. Treatments, of course, not very good. Side effects, bad. But as we move forward, they got better. And really from about 1999, we could see that glimmer of hope that we were probably going to survive. But in between all of that, I was diagnosed with a form of cancer that was very difficult to treat and very challenging to deal with over quite a few years. So that started probably around 1995, and my last round of treatment was in 2004. So quite the long journey, but there's been no recurrence. But really the fact is, you always think, wow, this was a double jeopardy in managing two very confronting illnesses. For me, stigma is something that we are all responsible to deal with. And I think being fortunate enough to work in the sector, I've understood the research and the impacts of stigma. But we have to look at two elements of stigma, and that is external stigma and then internal stigma. And external stigma is people who make judgments or have perceptions around you as a person living with HIV, and they can make quite disparaging judgments and statements about you, which can then lead to discrimination. And of course, it will affect many people, but often women, people who are of a different choice of gender. It can affect especially gay men and people of different ethnicities. And politics and religion mixed into all of that make it a pretty nasty recipe to stigmatise people living with HIV. All of that combined, you put that back then onto a person, and then they can develop internalised stigma. And that is about thoughts of, I'm no good, and HIV is the bad thing to have, and then things spiral out of control unless you actually get good support and good counselling. So for me, to understand stigma to learn about it, be educated enough to understand the difference between stigmatising behaviours and right out discrimination has been really important. So I'm only too happy to stand up and challenge stigma and discrimination if and when I see it. But I have been really fortunate in not experiencing very much of it. The key thing to that is living openly with HIV. No one can say any more about you. No one can hurt you anymore. You're there, you're openly HIV positive, and you have the means and the knowledge to actually challenge stigma if and when it does occur. So I've probably experienced a few problems where healthcare workers have made a statement. Oh, you're living with AIDS. Well, no, I'm not. I'm living with HIV. Or my status has been disclosed in a hospital environment without my consent. And that could mean quite the risk to people if they're in emergency, for example. But overall, my experiences have been quite positive about that. And if we are to then think of how we look at healthcare workers and how we can make sure that they are our allies, is to make sure that they're educated, that they do ongoing training to remind them of the insidious nature of stigma and what that means to the people that they are caring for. They have an equal responsibility to challenge it and to try to educate their co-workers. So all in all, I would say that it's not a big problem for me, but it is an enduring problem for many who are quite uncertain about it. So between people living with HIV and healthcare workers, it is about gaining the knowledge and learning the tools to actually be able to challenge stigma as it happens. And the key to that is going and getting support, getting counselling to deal with those negative feelings, but also to work with others within whatever environment you can to make sure it doesn't happen to others. So that's my message.